On this edition of Battleground, it's Veep week. Kamala Harris, fresh off of officially securing the Democratic nomination for president, announces her VP this week and kicks off a swing state tour. Plus, both campaigns investing big in Georgia, making stops in Atlanta over the past several days. But did Republican nominee Donald Trump make a big mistake there this weekend? What are voters saying about the race there now, and how will Trump's renewed attacks on the Republican governor of Georgia impact the election? We head to Atlanta for the latest. Plus, on Tuesday, the newly named Democratic ticket makes its debut right here in Philadelphia. We'll explain why Pennsylvania remains the top target for both campaigns. Then, early voting. Why is it so important? What's changed since 2020? And what impact could it have in many of our swing states? We head to Arizona for a look at how early voting there will play a key role in who wins the Grand Canyon state. I'm Cupp, and this is Battleground.
Raffensperger and Brian Kemp, your governor, who I got elected, by the way. If it wasn't for me, he would not be your governor. I think everybody knows that. He's a very disloyal person, isn't he? Very disloyal. Your governor, Kemp, and Raffensperger are doing everything possible to make 2024 difficult for Republicans to win. And they don't want the vote, to be honest. In my opinion, they want us to lose.
Donald Trump in Atlanta on Saturday night, opening old wounds in his now 4-year battle with the popular governor of Georgia over the results of the 2020 election. If that sounds like welcome news for Republicans in Georgia, well, it's not. Trump's renewed attacks on Brian Kemp have set off alarm bells among Republicans in the Peach State. Conservative radio host Eric Erickson, based in Atlanta, tweeted this Saturday night: Donald Trump is really trying to build unity in Georgia by attacking the sitting Republican governor, whose ground game he will need to win. And if he loses, it'll be because of this stuff and not a stolen election. And a former Republican legislator was even more blunt: Trump may have just lost Georgia. For more on the race in Georgia and the dueling Atlanta rallies, I'm pleased to be joined by Maya King, who covers Georgia and the Southeast for the New York Times. Maya, good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's start right there. Republicans are not happy about the latest dust-up between Donald Trump and Brian Kemp. Explain the dynamic there between the two.
You know, since 2020, it feels like every 2 years, Republicans sort of go through this, whether they're going to focus on the events of the presidential election 4 years ago or move forward. In 2022, Governor Kemp was challenged by a Trump-backed Republican whose main campaign argument was Kemp has been sufficiently disloyal to the Republican Party by not calling into question the results of the 2020 election. Here we are just 2 years later and 4 years from that election, and again, Republicans are having this debate. And many of the Republican strategists that I've spoke to and Republicans who are very motivated to win this November say that as long as they continue repeating this message of the election being stolen or the results somehow being illegitimate, this is what alienates the independent to moderate conservative voters in Atlanta suburbs. This is what scares off any voters who might actually want to support the Republican Party in the fall, and of course only furthers the enthusiasm and gives Democrats more room to continue to mobilize their own voters. So it's sort of a family discussion that is sort of blown out of hand again, but the party does have a closing window now to clean up this message.
Well, and not to mention, I mean, these attacks on Kemp, they haven't worked. Kemp is very popular in Georgia, and Georgia's going to be very important as a state. Republicans see Trump's attacks as politically unwise. What are you hearing, though, from Georgia voters about it?
Trump has a very healthy and large base of voters, not necessarily in the metro Atlanta area, but certainly in North Georgia and some of the red wall counties just sort of on the outside of the metro Atlanta area. And these are people who still are very much bought into to the falsehood that the election was stolen in 2020 and who will believe any and everything that the former president says and still count Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger as disloyal Republicans. And so there is still that divide in the state.
Right, and Trump had been leading in Georgia. We'll see at the end of the show what the state of the race there is now. And this all comes on the heels of a pretty raucous rally for Kamala Harris there last week, her first public rally since assuming the mantle of the party. How are Georgia Democrats feeling about the race now?
Well, I was at that rally last week, and if I could describe the feeling, on top of it being electric and exciting, it also felt like there was a level of relief there for many Democrats in Georgia, that not only did they have a candidate who could effectively articulate the party's message moving forward, but also someone who represents a lot of the same groups that Democrats will need to win here in Georgia. Harris is a Black and South Asian woman. She's a graduate of a historically Black college, and she has a number of cultural touch points as well with the Black community that I think will play a large role and already have in fundraising and organizing. And so you've already seen a lot of that on display here in Georgia. I think the big question now is whether or not she can take that enthusiasm and actually turn it into votes that will allow her to win the state in November.
Yeah, more on that. In both Georgia and North Carolina, there had been concern among Democrats about an enthusiasm gap with African-American voters, younger voters, when Joe Biden was still in the race. Are you surprised at how quickly Kamala Harris has sort of sparked a surge with 2 voting blocks that are key to her chances in November there?
Yeah, I was very struck by just how quickly it happened, the level of coalition that came together. But I think there are still a number of voters who may be low information and might not necessarily be tuning in just yet. And it's the job of the folks who have already gotten involved, and this was the message at last week's rally, to actually now go into their own communities, phone bank and volunteer, and continue to spread the message about this new ticket.
Maya King with the New York Times. Thanks so much, Maya. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, the newly minted Democratic ticket makes its debut here in Philadelphia on Tuesday. Why Democrats here feel a renewed sense of optimism and what both campaigns need to do to win this state. Battleground will be right back. Battleground will be right back. Welcome back to Battleground. With Kamala Harris making the first appearance with her new running mate tomorrow here in Philadelphia, the battle for Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes is still priority number 1 for both campaigns. Polls here had been favoring Donald Trump over Joe Biden for most of the summer, but new numbers just out suggest this race is considerably tighter. For more, I'm pleased to be joined once again by Jeff Cole from right here at Fox 29 Philadelphia. Jeff, so good to see you.
Nice to see you, I see.
Okay, so first and foremost, let me say that as we record this midday on this Monday, we still don't have an official announcement about the VP pick.
Things are changing. Things are changing.
Right. We're trying to keep up. But to your mind, why has Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro been at the top of consideration? How
about 19 electoral college votes? Yeah. It is the big place to be. You win this thing, it gets you a long way.
It's not the big enchilada, it's the big cheesesteak.
It is the big cheesesteak, certainly here in the city of Philadelphia, where cheesesteaks are absolutely loved. But clearly, it's the 19 electoral college votes. But not just that. Shapiro was in the second year of his first term. He has immense popularity here for a number of reasons, but about 60% of the voters here are in support of him due to his idea of sort of working with Democrats and Republicans and his ability to fix a bridge that fell in here on 95. Fixed it in about 12 days, and it really helped him. Republicans support him. Some 40% of Republicans support him. You get Shapiro, you may get Pennsylvania. It certainly helps.
Yes. Okay, so what's your sense of the race here in Pennsylvania since Kamala Harris came onto the ticket and Joe Biden stepped down?
After Biden's debate, Democrats in this state were absolutely morose. They thought this thing was over. You could sort of see their enthusiasm absolutely tank. I talk to Democrats a lot. I see them in the community in which I live. You know what their support is now? You know what their belief is now? They are jacked. They believe there are a number of paths to victory. They believe now that Kamala Harris brings people of color to the polls, young people to the polls, that there are coalitions there that they think had abandoned them with Biden. They see them absolutely back with Kamala Harris.
Yeah, we've seen them in a lot of our swing states.
Absolutely.
We'll see if that can last. You covered a rally here last week in Philadelphia with Harris and Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. What were you hearing from the voters there?
Elated. They were looking at what they thought was their future with Gretchen Whitmer, somebody clearly who looks to have some interest in becoming President of the United States of America, even though she has stepped away from the VP sweepstakes this time.
Right.
Also, their future again. Josh Shapiro, the 51-year-old governor here, who may be on the ticket. You also heard themes there. Themes were, we're not going back, we're moving forward. These are two rising stars in the Democratic Party, 51 and 52 years old. And you also heard them both say this, that they hope someday to look at Kamala Harris and say, hello, Madam President,
right.
Speaking to this idea of electing the first woman to lead this country.
Sure. Okay, switching over to the other campaign, it's really hard to believe that it's been just over 3 weeks since that assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, which really shocked the nation. And there's been talk now of Trump returning to the site of that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. What are you hearing about those plans?
Well, I mean, I think, so just talk to the state police about it. If it happens, they say they will staff it. They will certainly work as hard as they can to make that thing happen, but they don't want to do anything outside. Kamala Harris, as you've said, Tuesday night will be here with her new running mate. It's inside. Trump has been back to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Where did he go? He was inside in Harrisburg. State police say they will clearly staff this thing up. But remember, the guy who leads the state police in Pennsylvania, he was in Washington being grilled by House members after the attempted assassination. No one's going to like that idea back here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, understandably. Okay, since we're playing with some hypotheticals here, let me add two more for you, Jeff, since I have you.
Good to go.
Trump wins Pennsylvania if?
The vast red sections of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania come out hard for Donald Trump, or if there's some kind of big economic shock or possibly some sort of international incident, you can see voters possibly in the Commonwealth turning to Donald Trump.
Well, and we had some news out of Wall Street today that was not very good. Okay, and second, if Harris wins Pennsylvania, she can win Pennsylvania if what?
Philadelphia and Pittsburgh come out big and hard for her. The surrounding collar communities come out big for her. And that Shapiro, if he's on the ticket, helps bring this community along. Women, people of color, young people will be there if she wins.
Yeah. Jeff Cole from right here at Fox 29, my new home in Philadelphia. Jeff, thanks so much as always.
My pleasure.
Okay, for more on all of this, visit us at battlegroundnews.com or click on the QR code here. You can sign up for our newsletter, download our interactive swing state map, and find our social media links. And if you miss an episode, you can catch up on YouTube or through our podcast. Battleground, we'll be right back. Battleground, we'll be right back.
I think Mark Kelly, I think is his name, and there's like the Shapiro guy.
I know Mark, that's my boy. That's my boy right there.
I think he has a strong background, and I think he's familiar with our issues with the border.
He's useless. He only got into office because his wife was shot and the public felt sad for him.
It's going to be Shapiro. It's going to be because the delegates of Pennsylvania.
Welcome back to Battleground. Early voting in some of the swing states will be getting underway in just a matter of weeks as both campaigns focus on turnout as a key to victory. But in Arizona, early voting has been particularly contentious. For more on what's going on in Arizona, I'm pleased to be joined by John Hook from Fox 10 Phoenix. John, good to see you.
Great to see you, Essie.
Before we get to early voting, as we talk here, still no word about Kamala Harris's VP pick. What's the case for Mark Kelly, still in contention as of now, to be on the ticket?
He's a practical guy. He's a pragmatist. He's been obviously involved in the CHIPS Act, which has brought manufacturing and jobs to Arizona. So that's what he's best known for, and obviously gun control with what happened to Gabby, his wife, in 2011. If you poll Arizonans, a lot of them don't know a lot about Mark Kelly, frankly. He has not been out there. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. And this would be a pretty heavy lift. But I think for the Harris campaign, he brings a sense of competence. As an astronaut, obviously, it's mission first, success above all other. That would be a good look for them, I think.
Not to mention his military experience, which would add some foreign policy bona fides. Okay, switching gears, give us a primer on how the issue of early voting became a focus for Republicans in Arizona.
Well, it's completely flipped, SC, because obviously after 2020, Donald Trump talked a lot about how this early voting is rigged and that it's rife with fraud. But what they realized is if you don't start banking votes early, these election cycles in Arizona are 27 days. If you don't bank votes early, you are behind the 8 ball. And that's why he launched this Swamp the Vote in June of this year, trying to tell people, okay, I've got questions about early voting, but if that's a game we're playing, we need to play it. By the way, for the first time in 2020, Democrats outperformed Republicans in early voting in Arizona. This is a big, big deal, and they better get on board or they're gonna end up having problems again.
Yeah, it's amazing what a loss can do 4 years later. Okay, you interviewed Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, last week. Before I get your takeaway from that conversation, let's play a clip.
Actually has a set of visions and also a successful record of advocating for working people, of solving the problems that confront the country. And I just think that President Trump, he did it once, he's going to do it again.
So he doesn't seem bothered by the criticism that he's received since being named Trump's running mate. What was your biggest takeaway from that interview?
I was surprised at how relaxed he was. I expected somebody much more uptight and on guard. He wasn't at all. Funny guy, actually. He was a little bit different, and this is, politicians get caricatured. He was a little different than I expected, and he seemed very at ease with all the criticism. He's been in tough spots before. He was a Marine. He grew up in a hard-scrabbled upbringing, and so I don't think this bothers him that much. And a lot of the stuff that he's been dinged on is from interviews from 3 years ago, and he probably knew it was coming. And I didn't get a sense he was rattled.
That's really interesting. Now, you know Arizona voters. I know them pretty well, too, especially McCain Republicans. How do you think J.D. Vance is going to be received by those kinds of voters?
I don't know. There is still a rift between the Trump folks and the McCain folks. It's still there. They really are upset, the McCain people are, that the Trump people disparaged John McCain's military record. He won 9 elections here. He was a wildly popular guy here.
Yep.
And so to take him on is, I think, a losing effort. I don't think you want to go there. You know, it's addition, not subtraction in politics that wins. You need those people. And so we're starting to see a little bit of a bridge there, but that's still tough.
Really interesting. And John Hook, so great to have you there on the ground. Fox 10 in Phoenix. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again. Thanks.
Thanks, Essie.
Okay, up next, a look at the state of this race in all 7 of our swing states. Battleground, we'll be right back. Battleground, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Battleground. Time to check in with all 7 of our swing states to see where this race stands 2 weeks after Kamala Harris all but locked up her place atop the Democratic ticket. We start in Arizona, and Danielle Burke North of Fox 9 in Yuma. Danielle.
The Arizona primary just wrapped up, so we're on to November. In the presidential race, the latest numbers from public policy polling show a very tight race between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Trump just ahead by 2 points, but that's within the margin of error.
Thanks, Danielle. Now to Georgia and NPR and WABE politics reporter Rahul Bali. Rahul.
In Georgia, the race is tightening. Democrats tell me that they're getting more and more phone calls to pick up swag and signs, while Republicans believe that this is a short-term bump.
Thanks, Rahul. In Michigan, we check in with Arpan Lobo of the Detroit Free Press. Arpan.
Thanks, Essie. Michigan is once again going to be crucial to the election, and early polls show a very close race between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. The Real Clear polling average shows Harris holding a 2 percentage point lead over Trump in Michigan.
Thanks, Arpan. To Nevada and Gabby Birnbaum of the Nevada Independent. Gabby.
Now with Kamala Harris atop the ticket, Harris is up 2 points. And so I think Nevada Democrats are really excited about her ability, specifically in Nevada, to connect with young voters and voters of color who are both overrepresented in Nevada relative to other swing states.
Thanks, Gabby. From North Carolina, here's Dawn Vaughn of the News and Observer. Dawn.
Here in North Carolina, the latest Bloomberg poll shows that Trump has a small lead against Kamala Harris. He's come down here for rallies. Harris has 2. We're still very much in play, and it's a close race with Trump with a little bit of an edge right now.
Thanks, Don. Okay, here in Pennsylvania, where the Democratic ticket will hold its first rally on Tuesday. Here's John Cole from the Pennsylvania Capital Star. John.
With just under 100 days left until the 2024 presidential election, it is pretty clear that Pennsylvania is going to go down to the wire. The latest polling shows former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris neck and neck in Pennsylvania, most polls within the margin of error. Worth noting that Harris seemingly doing a little better than Biden was just a few weeks ago when he was the candidate at the top of the ticket.
Thanks, John. And finally to Wisconsin and reporter Dan Hagan from Newswatch 12 in Rhinelander. Dan.
SC, Wisconsin Democrats are fired up for Kamala Harris. An organizer here in Rhinelander told me he hasn't seen this sort of energy in years. Polls continue to show a tight race. Harris holds a 2-point advantage in the latest head-to-head polls. But when you add RFK Jr. plus Green and Libertarian candidates, Trump takes a 1-point lead in a Bloomberg poll.
Thank you, Dan. That's it for now. I'm SC Cupp. See you next time here on Battleground.